But let's transition to a big-time matchup that we have this Sunday in Tampa Bay. We have the 9-4 Cincinnati Bengals taking on the 6-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Bengals are favored by 3.5 points in this game. The kickoff for this game is set for 4:25 on CBS. The over-under for this game is 44 points. We got Joe Burrow versus Tom Brady. Very excited for this matchup. So when I look at this matchup, honestly, every single matchup in this game favors the Cincinnati Bengals. I believe that the Bengals have the better quarterback. I believe that the Bengals have the better offense. I believe that the Bengals have better skill position players than the Buccaneers have. I also believe that the Bengals defense is better right now than the Buccaneers defense is overall. So honestly, on paper, this matchup is a mismatch. But when I look at what the Bengals have been able to do during this 5-game winning streak, the Bengals have been sensational as an offense during these 5 games that they've won. This is the Bengals points per game during this 5-game winning streak. They're averaging 30 points per game. Their opponents are averaging 20 points per game. The Bengals are averaging 408 yards per game. Their opponents are averaging 323 yards per game during this 5-game winning streak. Joe Burrow touchdown to interception ratio is 10 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. Their opponents' touchdown to interception ratio is 5 to 3. So the Bengals offensively have been sensational during this 5-game winning streak, and Joe Burrow has emerged as an MVP candidate. Right now, we got 27 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 3,685 passing yards. He's completing 68% of his passes. Joe Burrow has been great in the middle towards the end of the season. You remember at the beginning of the season, it was a rough start for Joe Burrow because the Bengals started off 0-2. They lost to the Steelers week 1, and then week 2, they lost to Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys. But Joe Burrow has played some great football lately, and he entered the MVP conversation once Jamar Chase left the lineup, because during Jamar Chase's absence, that's when Joe Burrow started to elevate his game. And honestly, I thought that the Bengals did great in the absence of their star receiver. And without Jamar Chase, the Bengals in 5 games, they won against the Panthers, they won against the Steelers, won against the Titans, and they got Jamar Chase back against the Chiefs. But in those 5 games to go, well, 4 games. It was 4 games. I'm sorry, I was wrong. It was 4 games. They went 3-1 in those 4 games without Jamar Chase. And I thought that was impressive. And that's when Joe Burrow entered the MVP conversation. And he's been playing well ever since. This is Joe Burrow this year in the 4th quarter of 1-score games. His QBR is 85. That's ranked first in the NFL. He has 7 passing touchdowns. That's ranked first in the NFL. His yards per dropback is 7.8. That's ranked second in the NFL. This is all in the 4th quarter of 1-score games. So, Joe Burrow is a clutch quarterback. And that's why when I look at young quarterbacks and I compare them to old quarterbacks, I compare Joe Burrow to Tom Brady. When I look at the way Justin Herbert plays for the Chargers, I compare him to Aaron Rodgers. When I look at Patrick Mahomes, I think Patrick Mahomes has a little bit of Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers in him. When I look at Joe Burrow, I see Tom Brady because Joe Burrow isn't the most athletic quarterback. He's not the most gifted quarterback. But what he is he's a leader and he has a will to win football games. And that's why you see in the fourth quarter, Joe Burrow makes plays for the Cincinnati Bengals to be able to win football games. And honestly, I like the comparison with Joe Burrow and Tom Brady. But even when you look at their careers, in the early part of Tom Brady's career, they were winning Super Bowls in spite of Tom Brady, not because of Tom Brady. I remember back when the Patriots, in the early part of Brady's career, I remember their defense being the strength of their football team, led by the great Bill Belichick. Defensively, they had Willie McGinnis, they had Richard Seymour, they had Teddy Bruschi. So that was the strength of their football team in the early stages of Tom Brady's career. Joe Burrow, on the other hand, got to the Super Bowl last year, but this Bengals football team is centered around Joe Burrow's ability to win games. This ain't about the Bengals defense, and I'm not taking nothing away from Lou Admiral and his defense for the Cincinnati Bengals. But this Bengals football team, their strength is Joe Burrow and that offense. That's the difference in Tom Brady and Joe Burrow when it comes to their careers and the strength of their football teams in the early stages of their careers. Tom Brady had an elite defense that carried him in the early stages of his career. Joe Burrow doesn't have that. That's not to take anything away from that defense, but this Bengals team, their strength is their offense with Joey B. Now, offensively, we know the Bengals, they have Jamar Chase, they got T. Higgins, they got Tyler Boyd. In the backfield, they got Joe Mixon, they got P. Ryan. So they got a 1-2 punch at the running back position. So the only questions that we have about the Bengals offense is whether or not they're going to be able to protect Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow has been sacked 35 times this season. That's tied for the fourth most in the NFL. That's the only questions that we have about this Bengals offense. So their offensive line, center Ted Karras, Alex Kappa, Lyle Collins, Jonah Williams, Cordell Volson, if they can step up and elevate their games as the season goes along, and as we get closer to the playoffs, the Bengals could definitely go on another deep playoff run. That Bengals offensive line is going to be the key in the Bengals' hopes to return back to a second consecutive Super Bowl. Because we know Joe Burrow, he is it, and we know their weapons offensively are elite. Now, when you look at the Buccaneers, that Buccaneers offense has been pathetic this year. They've been terrible. And last week against the 49ers, Tom Brady had to drop back to pass 55 times. 55 times Tom Brady had to throw the ball, which means the Buccaneers are a one-dimensional football team. Now, I still believe that Tom Brady is one of the best quarterbacks that we have in the NFL. Even at 45, Tom Brady is still an elite quarterback. He got 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 3,585 passing yards. He's completed 66% of his passes this year. We know that Tom Brady can still fling that football, and he is still very, very clutch as a quarterback. One of the most clutch quarterbacks in the NFL, even at age 45. We saw what he did a few weeks ago against the New Orleans Saints, overcoming a 13-point deficit in the fourth quarter of that game, and the Buccaneers were able to win that football game with Tom Brady heroics. So we know Tom Brady can get it done when the game is close. But that's the thing. Going up against this elite Bengals football team, can the Buccaneers keep this game close so Tom Brady can bring it home for them late in the fourth quarter? We saw the gap in the 49ers and the Buccaneers last week, and the 49ers 35-7 win over the Bucs. The game was so bad, Fox turned the game off and turned on the Panthers-Seahawks game. That's how bad of a beatdown the 49ers put on that Buccaneers football team last week. I think the Bengals are just as good as the 49ers are. So I don't know if the Buccaneers are going to be able to hang around in this game to keep it close for Tom Brady to bring it home in the fourth quarter. I just don't know. And honestly, the Buccaneers, I like their skill position players in Mike Evans, in Chris Godwin, and in Julio Jones. But they're one-dimensional, and they don't do a great job at protecting Tom Brady, and they can't run the football. So the Bengals defense, who don't have Trey Hendrickson right now, Trey Hendrickson is out with a broken wrist. They still got Sam Hubbard. They still got DJ Reader. They still got BJ Hill at linebacker. You got Logan Wilson, who I believe is one of the more underrated linebackers in the NFL. You got Eli Apple at corner. Even though I don't believe in Eli Apple, he's done a pretty good job over the last few weeks. They got Von Bell and Jesse Bates. They can pin their ears back in this game and go after Tom Brady because the Buccaneers have no running game to speak of whatsoever. Their running game is non-existent. So I believe that the Bengals are a better football team than the Buccaneers are. I believe right now Joe Burrow is slightly better than Tom Brady is. So I'm going to roll with the Bengals to beat the Buccaneers in Tampa Sunday afternoon. I'm going Bengals 27, Buccaneers 17. Everybody go follow Wise Guys on Twitter at WiseGuys_H. Also on Facebook, Wise Guys.